Coming to you live from my parents' couch in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, digital sports producer for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I am here with Paul Zeise at Post-Gazette World Headquarters on the North Shore, just across from Acrisure Stadium, where the Steelers have just scored a exciting, if not beautiful, victory against the Las Vegas Raiders. Paul, just give me your gut reactions to, what was an emotional night for the Steelers with the passing of Franco Harris, the celebration of the, 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, and obviously a last-minute victory. Wasn't beautiful, but it was what it was, right?
I mean, the ceremony at halftime was incredible. They did a great job of honoring Franco Harris, honoring his family, his obviously his widow and his son were there with Art Rooney. I think they did an incredible job with that. So that was pretty special, and it was pretty cool seeing a lot of different people that were there. All the ex-team, a lot of the ex-Steelers were there. Before the game, I ran into Phil Villapiano, who obviously is a key character in the original game. So all that stuff was really, really spectacular. As for the game itself, I saw two horrific football teams playing a horrific football game. But I guess if you want to get excited because the Raiders may be the stupidest team I've ever seen and allowed the Steelers to win the game, I guess we can get excited, and now we can have another week of delusions that the Steelers are actually in the hunt.
Well, before we get into that, Paul, just want to remind everyone, if you're joining us for the first time, please hit the like button. Help us out with the YouTube algorithm. It's Christmas Eve, so we'll definitely appreciate any support you can give us. So hit that like button. Please also subscribe to the Post-Gazette on YouTube. It'll really help us out in terms of making sure we deliver videos all the time. We'll have a bunch with Christopher Carter with the North Shore Drive early this week. He'll have a lot more of Steelers Raiders. And then, of course, check out the subscription deal down in the description. $6 for 6 months of access to post-gazette.com. We'll have you covered for the last 2 months here, or 2 games here of the Steelers season in terms of coverage. With that, Paul, I just want to get into, you mentioned the pregame and halftime ceremonies with Franco Harris. Those of us at home were cut off by the NFL Network in terms of the halftime ceremonies. We saw Art Rooney's comments about Franco Harris with his family and everything, but after that point, the video tribute was cut off. So can you talk to us about what the emotions were like in the stadium, what that video tribute was like? Give fans a sense of what was happening at Acrisure Stadium tonight.
Well, I mean, I think the video tribute was tremendous, but just because they actually had, they had highlights that were intertwined with interviews with obviously some of his former teammates and some of the guys, obviously, that were actually sitting there in the stadium. And it was the right tone, it was celebratory. It kind of, all of the interview clips that they played kind of gave you a little bit more of a sense of who Franco Harris was and what he was. And of course, the crowd was going crazy. I mean, I thought honestly, it was perfect. The way the ceremony was, it was the right tone. I thought it was the right, the right mood. Art Rooney said, "Hey, the big guy was supposed to be here with us. His wife or his widow and his son were there. I think it was perfect. And as far as those things go, I think it was perfect."
What was the mood in the stadium tonight, Paul? Obviously, there was some question about how many people would be there with the cold weather. From TV, you could tell people were pretty cold. Obviously, the turnout probably wasn't what it would be if it was, 30 degrees, a little bit warmer, but there were still a lot of people there. And I think you and I both know from having covered sports for a long time, sometimes a dedicated crowd of 30,000 people can be louder than a passive crowd of 60,000 people. What was the mood inside the stadium in terms of the people who turned out tonight?
For most of the night, there was a lot of booing going on, to be honest. There were a lot of people that were cranky and grumpy, obviously the cold weather. I thought it sounded like a crowd where there was about 25,000 no-shows, which is what there was. It was okay. Obviously, the last drive they went crazy. When they scored a touchdown, but for the most part, wasn't a lot to cheer about in this game. I mean, if you think about it, Mike Tomlin went for field goals, and they booed and booed and booed after he missed the second field goal. Then when they went for the field goal to make it 10-6, they booed him for that. They booed some of the play calling that went on. I think until the last drive, the loudest the stadium was when they were all booing something going on. But I can't get excited. They scored 13 points. I mean, I see people on social media going crazy about Kenny Pickett. I mean, they scored 13 points, period. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what are we talking about? One touchdown in presumably a 4-quarter game. One touchdown against a horrific team. I mean, again, people can be excited that the Steelers won and they can keep their flights of fantasy, that they might get to the playoffs this year and all that other stuff. And I'm sure it's going to be huge for them to try and win next week so they can say, hey, we went into the last week of the season with a chance. But my point is, if that's your take and you think this team is going to win like this next year, they're going to win games like this, you know what they're going to be next year if this is how they play, if this is how their offense plays, if this is what we see every week from the offense, you know what they're going to be next week? A team that is 7-8 or 8-7 going into the last 2 weeks, scraping the bottom to try and make the playoffs. That's what we're going to see. They've got to get so much better. It's ridiculous.
Paul, I was going to ask you how cold it was, but I'm just going to go straight into the offense. I think last week.
Let me say this.
Okay.
So over there, there's a whole lot more people that were in the press box than normal in the back of the press box where I usually do this video. So I said, right, I'm going to leave with about a minute left in the game and come over here to the office where I can have peace and quiet and not all these people banging equipment around, all the other stuff that goes on. So I did have to walk, and after they scored the touchdown, I left because I knew that Derek Carr wasn't going to score a touchdown and win the game or do anything good. So I just said, okay, I'm leaving now. I'm going to walk. I tell you what, the walk from the stadium to here was so ridiculously cold. I can't imagine what it was like sitting out there for 3.5 hours like these other people did.
Yeah, I mean, I am at my parents' now. I was traveling from Cecil over to Bethel Park, and just going from my front door to my car to then the car to my parents' door was a lot, just carrying gifts in, stuff like that. So I can't imagine having sat out there all night. I saw a lot of snow on the broadcast, so I'm sure that only made it colder. Obviously, the temperature is what it is, but once you get some flakes in your face and stuff, it's a little bit different. So quite cold. Paul, do you think it had any impact on the game, that we watched, the product on the field? Because I think both teams struggled offensively. The Steelers obviously didn't get that touchdown drive until the second half. What was your, before we get into the X's and O's, what was your appraisal of how the conditions played into the game?
I mean, obviously they had something to do with the game, but I mean, at the end of the day, you basically had two very mediocre or bad teams on the field. I don't think it would have played out much differently had they played it in Vegas, and it was 75 degrees and sunny. I don't think so. Derek Carr, to me, is the ultimate stat guy who can get you some stats, but he makes so many boneheaded plays. Do you understand that you can't win with him? And, I'll give you a great example. They're up 10-3. The Steelers throw an interception right about, Pickett throws that first interception, that interception. Guy runs it back to about the 45, 50-yard line. You're up 10-3 against an offense that has done absolutely nothing the entire game. You've got Josh Jacobs on your team. The only thing you can do there is throw an interception. You know what I mean? And it's exactly what they did. I said, even in the chat, I said, if they do anything but run the ball here, they're idiots. Because here's the thing. Even if they run it 3 times there, right, and don't get the first down, they're punting the ball, and presumably the Steelers are starting inside their own 10. They've run through about almost 3 minutes off the clock, right? I mean, I don't understand what these offensive coordinators are thinking. They got the ball back, and he throws another interception. It just, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It really doesn't. And so I think that, had the game been played in 75-degree and sunny, yeah, maybe it would have been a little different. It'd have been 16-13 instead of 13-10. I mean, really, it's mind-boggling, some of the stuff that goes on with some of these offensive coordinators and what they do.
I was going to start with the offense, Paul, but I guess you've led well into the defense's performance tonight. Gave up the touchdown on the first drive. From there, really were very solid. Shut down Josh Jacobs, who, if I'm a Steelers fan going into tonight, I'm pretty fearful of him. He was one of the, he's the leading rusher in the NFL, and this defense has proven vulnerable to teams that are willing to just run the rock at the Steelers and go straight at them instead of trying to be too cute. They shut him down fairly well. What did you think of the defense's performance tonight? And especially Cam Hayward comes to mind for me. I think he had one of his better games tonight. He was everywhere in run defense. I was very impressed by the game he played.
Yeah, Cam Hayward was incredible tonight. He played really, really well. He blew up a lot of stuff that the Raiders were trying to do. He was active. He was involved in a lot of plays. I thought he played great. I really did. They did a good job of stopping the run. A lot of that was Hayward just blowing up plays and other guys, being able to make plays. They got a couple of pressures on Carr, but he wasn't under duress. He just made really bad decisions at times, which he does, which is why he's not a great quarterback. I thought both of the interceptions were just bad balls or balls that either receivers need to catch or take a little mustard off of them and let them catch, you know what I mean? Either they were bad balls or the receiver needs to catch it. One way or the other, if it hits somebody's hands, somebody needs to, come away with it. And so I just think that the defense that was opportunistic. They made plays when they needed to make plays. They stopped the run. They got some gifts from Derek Carr. It was all in all a pretty good night for the defense. They did some really, really good things, which this is the way we thought they were going to play, right? And this is the way we said they're going to win football games. But here's the thing. We said that at the beginning of the season. But as I say all the time, you're not beating you're not beating Joe Burrow. You're not beating Patrick Mahomes. You're not beating Tua. You're not beating these guys scoring 13 points. So, that's just the way it is. It works against these bad teams, and they've taken advantage of the back half of their schedule of a lot of bad teams, and that's okay. But I don't know that I'm ready to say, look at this formula they have. It only took them, 7 or 8 or 10 games to figure it out. This is going to be a winning formula next year. I mean, I really don't know that it's going to be a winning formula against anybody that has any quarterback that can throw the ball with any kind of success, because their offense, again, I keep going back to I know we're talking about the defense, but their offense has got to score more points. They got away with it tonight because Derek Carr gave them some gifts, and because Josh McDaniel, I don't know what the hell he was thinking with some of his play calling. But by the same token, the defense made the plays, so you give them credit. They made the plays. But I can't get that excited. I'm sorry, Adam. I know I'm supposed to be jumping around. They won on, the night for Franco and all that stuff. That's great. But I'm just going to tell you, this last half of the season has been as boring for me as I can remember watching Steelers. There's nothing interesting to me about these games. There's nothing interesting to me about the way they play. There's nothing interesting to me about their offense. They're playing so many teams are bad in the NFL. You know what, Adam? I never thought I'd say this, but I really wish that they would tomorrow just say, you know what, we're done with the regular season. Get rid of all these bad teams. We're going to start the playoffs, because I can't watch these games anymore. I can't. And you know what? Next week they're going to play Baltimore. Right? Probably with Tyler Huntley. And Baltimore just clinched a playoff spot. So I doubt that they're going to bring Lamar Jackson back, which means we're going to get treated to another, 13-10 type of game. And then the last week of the season, they're going to play the Browns, who are really bad. I mean, Deshaun Watson, they should put Jacoby Brissett back in. He looks better than that guy. And if they win those games, we're going to hear about never having a losing season and all this other stuff and blah, blah, blah. Again, to me, it's about winning in the playoffs. And what they're doing is not going to win in the playoffs. So, frankly, if you're going to tell me I'm supposed to get excited because they just beat a team that lost to Jeff Saturday and Baker Mayfield 10 minutes after he signed with the Rams, I'm just not going to get all that excited about it.
I hear you, Paul. If you're looking to get involved in the chat tonight, just a reminder, you can hop in on YouTube or Facebook. We get all of those questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can before we sign off. We're probably going to be a little bit more abbreviated tonight because it is Christmas Eve. But if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. Paul, I guess the big questions I have for you on defense is: were you surprised that Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, who they got back for this game, Las Vegas, that they were not more involved after that first drive, that they were not making the plays that I think, especially in Devontae Adams' case, I expected him to be able to make against the Steelers defense, which has struggled against some top receivers this season. I think of A.J. Brown. I think of Stephon Diggs from Buffalo. Those guys all had success against the Steelers secondary, but we didn't see that from Devontae Adams tonight. Is that a credit to the Steelers secondary, or is it just a matter of it's a cold night and it's hard to throw?
I mean, a little of both. Derek Carr missed. Adams had a couple of opportunities to make really big plays, and Derek Carr threw the ball 50 yards too far or 50 yards too short. I don't know what he was doing. I thought he had, a couple of plays that he had a chance to really be involved. I think, there was a couple of times when what was his name? Pierre was manned up against Devontae Adams, and I just don't. To me, if I walk up to the line of scrimmage and that's what I see, I know that we're just going to run a go route. And you know what? And we're going to see if James Pierre can stop that, because he can't. But they never really exploited it. And again, probably 2 or 3 times they did exploit it, right? Carr missed the throw badly. That's what I can't understand. What the Raiders were doing in the second half made no sense to me. No sense. You've got field position, a 7-point lead, and you're playing against a dead offense, right? Why are you throwing the ball with your mistake-prone quarterback who has proven all game he can't make throws? I don't get it. But, again, it was a gift to the Steelers. I guess it was Christmas, and they were in the Christmas spirit, and they wanted to give the Steelers a win. I don't know. I don't understand it.
Let's get into the offense a little bit, Paul. It was a struggle most of the game. I had written down in my notes, is the offense better with Trubisky versus Pickett? I'm not going to get into a debate now because they won the game and it's Christmas Eve. I'm going to be charitable. But what did you think of the offense tonight compared to what, I think a lot of people saw as kind of the peak of the Steelers offense in the last maybe 6 quarters before this game, moving the ball well? What did you see tonight versus that period of time with Mitch Trubisky in the game?
I thought what I saw tonight was it was not good. I mean, they had one drive. They missed a couple of field goals, but again, they missed field goals because they stalled and they couldn't get first downs when they needed to get first downs. Let's not forget that. The one field goal wasn't like third; it was like 4th and 8 or something, 4th and 7. People wanted them to go for it. And the other one was like 4th and 4. I mean, to me, that tells me your offense isn't getting the job done, period. And I think that, okay, last drive is wonderful. And, I guess if you want to really bring it out, we could sit here and say, well, you know what? Last year we praised Ben for doing that. Actually, no, last year what we did was we said that Ben needs to retire because he's still got a little bit of moxie and still is able to pull some of these games out at the end. But he shouldn't, it shouldn't take until the final drive before they finally are able to go down the field and score. And so my point is, what we said last year about Ben was, boy, he's still got that heart and he's still, a winner and he's still, but, it's probably a good time for him to retire. That's what we said about him. So, I mean, what are we talking about here when we're talking about, a rookie? I mean, the offense needs to be better than it is. If there's anything I can say that's a theme about this, the offense needs to be better than it is. I don't care that they were able to get a touchdown at the end of a game against a really bad team. It's ridiculous that that's what it took to beat a really bad team. On the road, they're on the road. I mean, here's my thing. How many of those Raiders players really cared about this game? Once they got out there on that field and felt how cold it was, it should have been a game the Steelers won with relative ease in some ways, but instead, we're sitting here jumping for joy because they pulled it out at the end, and it'd be different if it was 27-24 or something, or 20, something like that, but it wasn't. It was basically just the Steelers defense holding on for dear life, the Raiders making really bad decisions on offense. And then finally, the Steelers getting enough opportunities that they were able to go down the field and score.
I'll say this, Paul. I think there were a lot of times last year when they got to the end of games like this, and I believe Ben Roethlisberger was going to make those plays because Ben knew where the ball needed to go. I think there have been times this season when the Steelers have been in these late game situations and you didn't necessarily have that faith. So I totally get what you're saying in terms of moving the ball over the course of the entire game. I think it's an important step that Kenny Pickett was able to get the ball where it needed to go late. He knew where the targets were. He knew how to get the clock stopped. He knew how to run a drive at the end of the game in a way that Ben Roethlisberger might have last year. We haven't seen that very much this season. So I agree with you in terms of, most of this game. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't encouraging. But do you think it's an encouraging sign that they were able to win this game late in a way that they may not have been able to in September or October, when you just felt like late in the game they just didn't have a chance compared to tonight?
I mean, I don't know. Again, what's tough about me, Adam, is I just can't get excited about a horrible game against pulling out a horrible game against a bad team. I mean, it's great. I think it's great that they were able to go down the field. Maybe this gives them a little confidence and all that other stuff. Wonderful. But the Raiders are bad, and Derek Carr is bad. And, so I'll grant you your point. It's great for their confidence. Hopefully they can build on it. Hopefully, they've got that swag or whatever you want to say now. And, if they get late in games, Kenny Pickett will know where to go with the ball. But I just can't really get all that, juiced about it, to be honest.
Paul, one thing you and I talked about last week is the lack of involvement from Pat Freiermuth, the Steelers tight end, who has really been, I think, their best receiver this season in crucial situations. We didn't see him almost all of last week. I think you and I said he didn't get a target when we looked at the stats on this show last week. This week he gets targets late in the game. Do you think that was important? And talk about Pat Freiermuth's importance to this offense and how that may have been proven tonight.
I mean, I can't understand it. I can't understand why they don't use him more. I can't understand why they don't throw to him more. Hopefully they learned something late in the game that, hey, this guy's pretty good. But to me, he should actually be your primary target, followed by Pickens and then Johnson. That's who you should really be looking to throw the ball to. To me, Pickens is a home run hitter, but Freiermuth is a guy that is very productive. And you throw it to him, he's going to catch it. You throw it to him, he's going to get some yardage after the catch. You throw it to him, you know what? You're going to get some some physicality in your offense. And I think it's really important stuff. And I think, that makes your offense a little bit different. I want to see him get the ball more. I want to see Pickens get the ball more. Deontay Johnson gets the ball enough. They throw it to him enough. But there's so many plays that I watch where they hand the ball to certain guys or whatever, or they throw the ball, and it's like, dude, this Freiermuth guy's pretty good. How about just throw it to him and let him make plays?
Another thing I observed was that that read from Kenny Pickett on the touchdown throw to Pickens was pretty beautiful. I was sitting on I was sitting right here where I am right now, calling it out, saying he got him before he threw the pass. We haven't seen much of that from this offense this season, Paul. I think a year ago we may have felt differently, but it was, I think, a beautiful thing to have seen that offense make that play down the middle of the field in the end zone. One of the longer touchdowns this offense has scored all season. What did you see on that touchdown throw? Was that encouraging to you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big time throw. That might have been the first time they threw what was it, a 19-yard touchdown? That might have been the first time they threw it 19 yards down the field, right? I mean, that I don't understand. That's the other thing about this offense I don't understand. They don't throw the ball down the field. They don't try and stretch the field. They don't try and throw the ball, And I hear people say, well, the Raiders played a safety pretty deep back there. Okay, throw it to the sideline. If you run 2 go routes, it can only be at 1. He can only get the 1. So run 2 go routes and throw it down the field. Even if you throw 45 yards further than your guy and it falls incomplete, at least you've made them think about it. And I think that's the thing I really don't get when it comes to the Steelers offense. They don't try and throw the ball deep. They don't do anything at all to try and get the ball to Pickens. They don't do anything at all artificially to try and get the ball to Freiermuth. And so, you watch it and you just have to say to yourself, like there should never ever be a play that is called where they throw the ball to Gentry. All right, he had his one little play in the sun, in the first week or second week when they ran that screen and he ran for about 40 yards. Other than that, he's a guy you don't throw the ball to, but they waste passes throwing it to him. There was a throw today I think it was to Jalen Warren, 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I don't even know what that play was. There's just way too many plays that they waste where they actually should be looking at. These are the guys we want to get the ball to.
Jason in the chat's asking us, do you think the Steelers should draft a receiver in the first round or at some point in the draft next year? What are your feelings? We're almost all the way through the season here. What are your feelings on the Steelers receiving core? I'll throw Pat Freiermuth in there. I think he's only gotten better this season. I think he's only gotten more reliable. I think there's questions about Deontay Johnson, questions about George Pickens' reliability in crucial moments. Where do you feel this receiving core stands with two games left to play?
They need another receiver. I don't know if I'm using my first round pick on a receiver, but they need another receiver. There's no question about it. The receiving core is not good enough. They've got 2 guys. They need a third. We could all say, well, what about Chase Claypool? Obviously, that ship sailed a few weeks ago. They need somebody, and I don't know that I would use my first round draft choice there, but I think that I might, if it's a second or third round pick, I might think about it, depending on who's there and what's there. They need a number of things. That's the thing about this team. They really need a number of things. They need a middle linebacker, a corner, probably an offensive and a defensive lineman, and a receiver. So, I think you've got some flexibility early on in the draft to try and pick the best player available for wherever you're, whatever position you go for. But there's a lot of other ways they could get a receiver. There's some good players out there that are going to be free agents, and I don't know that you necessarily have to go get a superstar, right? But if you can go get a good complementary third down, third receiver that's a good slot receiver, that runs good routes and blocks reasonably well and has good hands, those guys are available. You just got to find, which one fits what you're looking for. That allows you then to not have to play the Gunnar Olszewskis and the Steven Sims. And those guys are all ham and eggers. They're just not good enough. So to me, I would think about a receiver, but I don't know in the first round.
Yeah, I agree. I think they need a receiver at some point in the draft. I'm very curious to see what Calvin Austin brings to the table as, potentially that third receiver. He has a lot of speed out of Memphis. So, I'm excited to see what he might be able to bring to the table. But you always want to have more guys in that mix so that if Calvin Austin doesn't work out, you have someone to challenge him in that room. I think that's, something the Steelers kind of lack at this point is you have a clear top 2 in Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. But after that, it's not clear what's there. So I think you have to add to that room a little bit to create some competition. Paul, we talked about this a little bit at the top, but I want to get back to some of the people who may have been joining us late. The Franco Harris ceremony being cut off at basically when the video introduction or video tribute was being introduced. What do you think of the NFL Network doing that? I was very appalled. Not only that they went to commercial right as they were introducing the video tribute, but that the commercial they played, at least locally, I'm in Pittsburgh, I saw a Lowe's commercial that kind of looked like a tribute for the first maybe 20 seconds and then just turned out to be a Lowe's commercial. I feel like that was a really low-rent decision. You were there. You saw the video tribute. What would you say about that decision to having as being someone who saw it and knows that the people at home didn't get to see it?
Yeah, no, they should have showed it to everybody. It should have been a part of the broadcast. They could have come out with different commercial breaks. There's other places where you can stuff commercials, but again, we all know that they pay the bills. Commercials pay the bills. So, I mean, they've got to get them all in, and that's just the way it is. And maybe they were backed up a little bit from the first, because the Raiders went 8 or 9 minutes with their first drive. So maybe they didn't get quite as many commercials in, but they should have shown it. It was beautiful. I mean, the whole ceremony, like I said before, from start to finish was perfect. The right tone, the right touch, right? And it hit all of the high notes that you wanted it to hit. I think it was tremendous.
Paul, it's Christmas Eve. I'm at my parents' house. You guys may notice I have a different background here. I think we're all enjoying the holidays. Kipper in the chat asked me, what are you enjoying as your beverage of choice? Maybe not tonight because it's a little late. It's 11:51 p.m. on the East Coast. But maybe tomorrow night while you're at Christmas Eve or Christmas with your family. I can tell you I enjoyed a Mad Elf this evening, an aged 3 years ones, a little more malty than the ones they sell in the stores. The Mad Elf's a little more cherry when you buy it fresh, but I got a maltier version because I've been aging them for 3 years because I have a friend who told me to do so. Paul, what are you enjoying on Christmas Eve? You can tell me food, beer, whatever.
I'm pretty simple when it comes to stuff like that. I mean, I'll probably have a couple of Michelob Ultras, and that's a nice cool bottle of Michelob Ultra. I really like. I've never been like a whiskey or a bourbon or any of that. I don't do that. That stuff's a little too hard for me. I do enjoy a little vodka from time to time, but I'm not feeling vodka tomorrow. I'm probably going to have a couple of just the cold beers, watch the NFL games, and relax, enjoy myself. I like to do that. On Christmas Day is usually about the only day I don't work for the entire year. So that's a good thing.
All right, everyone. Well, it's late. It's Christmas Eve. Please enjoy the evening with your families. It's been a great episode. Great response. I'm honestly shocked how many people turned out tonight to watch our video. So thank you for supporting this channel. Thank you for supporting the Post-Gazette. We will be back on New Year's Day next week, me and Paul, after the Steelers-Ravens matchup in Baltimore, reacting to that game. So please make sure you tune in then. Please make sure you're subscribed and check out that subscription deal down in the description. $6 for 6 months of access to postgazette.com. Otherwise, have a happy holidays, everyone. And please be blessed. Please be safe. And, we appreciate your support. Any final thoughts, Paul?
We'll see you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.